Great to see such a large crowd. This is fun. So I'm going to talk about cannabis agriculture in the North Coast. So primarily, this is going to be focused specifically on Humboldt County and watersheds adjacent to Humboldt County. My job as a cooperative extension specialist is to study land use in the state of California. I'm starting my 4th year right now, and as I've been looking at what's important to people in the state, 3 things have jumped out to me. The first thing is water. You know, if you live in the south, you're worried you're going to run out. If you live in the north, you're worried the people in the south are going to steal all your water. The second thing is fire. Everybody is afraid their house is going to burn down. And the third thing that no matter where I go in the state, people want to talk about is cannabis. This has been in the news constantly over the last couple of years. There's just been a tremendous amount of headlines about the impact of cannabis on the environment, the impact of cannabis on people's livelihoods, and how it's changing the state of California. The thing is, the journalists were way ahead of the researchers on this. They found this story. They realized what was going on. The people in this room probably knew what was going on, right? But there's not much research on this at all in the academic sense that people in my discipline are sort of used to thinking about this. There's a few papers that have shown some impacts of rodenticides from cannabis grows, a few papers that have looked at water use, but really that's about it. I mean, there's about 4 papers. So what did we want to do? We wanted to say, well, there's all this stuff in the press about what's going on. Nobody's documented it. Let's just do the basic thing and figure out what's out there, right? So nothing complicated. We just wanted to map how much cannabis was being grown in Northern California. We wanted to say something about the grows. How big are they? Are they 50 acres? Are they a quarter acre? You know, what do they actually look like? I wanted to say, do the location of grows correlate with indicators of environmental quality? So are these grows causing land clearing? Are they in areas with threatened and endangered species? And, you know, what's the water use of these grows look like? And finally, we wanted to talk a little bit about what type of properties these grows are located on. We're not going to get to that today. Not enough time. A real refresher for people who may not be from the state of California or people who are from California and are a little bit confused about the legal status of cannabis. Is it legal? Medical cannabis is legal in California, and it has been for 20 years. Amazingly, over that 20 years, there has never been a system to track what's grown, who sells it, and who consumes it. Zero tracking. Nobody in the state government can tell you how much cannabis is grown in California. Nobody can tell you how much is sold. This does not exist. There's been laws passed last year that by 2018, hopefully there'll be a system that will help us understand this industry. But because there hasn't been the systematic tracking of who's growing cannabis and how much is being grown, we don't know really anything about its production. Who can grow it? Anybody with a valid note from your doctor can grow 6 plants, although this has actually been upped by the Supreme Court of California, and now you can basically grow what you want. Most people will grow up to 99 plants. There's federal enforcement at over 100 plants, so at 99 plants, most people cut off. Many growers do grow larger if they want to, but they do face a little bit of potential penalty from the federal government as a felony, if that's the case. Under the new bills that have passed last year, there's potentially unlimited size of grows. But what's really interesting is there's also really strong local controls. So the new system of permitting that's passed for marijuana and cannabis grows is a dual permitting system. So you need local permit and you need a state permit. Local authorities can basically write their land use laws however they want, all the way to full exclusion of cannabis production. So local governments have a lot of control about what's going to happen in this industry. So if you're concerned about this or interested in this in your own county or your own jurisdiction, you actually have a big say about what could happen there. Okay, real quickly I want to talk about 3 different types of grows because I'm only going to focus on one of these. The first one is the trespass grows. these are, nasty illegal grows taking place on private timberlands and public lands as well, where growers don't have permission to be there. They're doing it illegally. Some people will argue these are related to cartels. I'm not sure the evidence for that is as strong as some people think, but I'm not going to talk about that today. Back to the microphone, sorry. Second one is warehouse or indoor grows. When I've talked to people in the industry, they'll say this is 60 to 70% of all cannabis produced in California is going to be grown in warehouses. There's a huge part of the industry, uses a lot of electricity, has some interesting environmental impacts, but I'm going to leave that alone today as well. So what I'm going to talk about is the main production methods up here in Humboldt County, and these are what I'm going to term agricultural grows. And I'm going to use that term because given the detection methods we're using to map these grows, these people are not afraid of being known as farmers, right? These are agricultural production methods. Within agricultural production methods, people will grow inside of greenhouses or hoop houses, and other people will grow completely outdoor. And there's a complete range of mixes between those two extremes. Some of the hoop houses do have artificial lights that they'll use at some times of the year, but many do not. So when I started this project about 2 years ago, the plan was simple. We were just going to map all of Northern California. We decided we'd start doing it with a random sample. A year into it, we had completed about 60% of the watersheds in Humboldt County. So I said, that's good enough. We need to start actually analyzing this data. But it took a long time because there's a lot of grows. This was all done with undergraduate researchers from 2 universities, myself, Jake Brenner, my colleague on this research. It's about 1,000 hours of digitizing. What's the data we used? The simple, free Google Earth images that we can all see. So there's really great images for 2012 and 2013. And you can look at these images for free online, and it's pretty easy to see the cannabis grows. So how do you do it? You simply find the grows, you delineate the area of the grow on a map, you export all of this into a GIS, and you can do your analysis. Really easy to see. One question I get sometimes is, how do you know it's cannabis in the greenhouses? I get that question everywhere, but in Humboldt County, when I present here, nobody asked that question here, but when I present this other places. But we could use a little bit of data from the county aid commissioner, and you can see the greenhouse area that we were able to map growing over time. The nursery stock, which is probably using other greenhouses, is completely flat. So we have, I think, fairly strong evidence that there's something going on here. What do we find? Well, there's quite a bit of cannabis being grown in our sample within Humboldt County. We were able to map about 300,000 total plants at 4,200 grow sites. These 4,200 grow sites were spread over 1,700 parcels. So lots of parcels had multiple grow sites within the parcels. An interesting point is that the total area of the grow sites, if you're just counting the footprint of either a greenhouse or an outdoor garden, is really small, just 2 square kilometers. Compare that to other agricultural uses of land, I mean, that's a really small footprint. We'll come back to that in a little bit, though. Grows are actually pretty small. Greenhouse grows are about 100 plants. Outdoor grows are even smaller. And you can see from this map there's distinct watersheds that have lots of grows and watersheds that have no grows. Out of the 62 watersheds we ended up looking at, I think 11 watersheds we didn't find any grows at all. So there were still areas of the county where there really wasn't cannabis production. I want to emphasize this data is from 2012. We have an ongoing project right now where we have a whole bunch of people working together. We're trying to buy new data to update this to 2016. So it's an ongoing research project, and then we'll be able to tell what's happened over the last 4 years. Okay, first thing people want to know is what it's worth. It's really hard to say. Firstly, because we don't have any idea what the average yield is per plant. It's just not data that's available. Universities aren't running field trials on this type of thing. So we'll estimate a pound per plant. When I've talked to growers who say I can get 5 pounds from a big outdoor plant. So this is sort of a low estimate, 400-pound wholesale price, which I think is probably about right. That puts us at about 150 million wholesale versus a billion at retail value. That's for half of the watersheds in Humboldt County in 2012. So you can sort of do your own extrapolation of where you think it might be if you know this region now, but it's a large part of the economy here. And this is not taking into account any of the nice type of work that James did, showing what's the labor use in this. I've heard it costs about $100 to trim a pound of marijuana, so you're going to have substantial labor costs. You're going to have a lot of processing. A lot of the cannabis is processed and shipped off as value-added products. So the total impact is probably higher than that. If we compare that to the reports from the Egg Commissioner, you can see where cannabis stands in Humboldt County. It's a really, really large player. Is cannabis sucking California dry? That was one of the headlines in the New York Times. Again, this is very hard to say. We don't have very good data on water use by cannabis producers. This is, once again, things we just don't know. But what can we have some data saying about 22 liters a day per plant. I think this is potentially on the high end. Basically, if you do some estimation, you end up with about 2,500 acre-feet of water use per year. This comparison, water use for about 1,200 families, 1,000 acres of grapes, and the Potter Valley project, which exports water from Humboldt County, is at 159 acre-feet a year. So the size of water is not a huge issue. I'm going to come back to why I think water is still probably an important issue, though. And that's because the timing of the water use is critical. There's not good, right now, knowledge of where this water is coming from. There's a lot of evidence that they're pulling from small streams at the wrong time of year, and this could have large environmental impacts. So my point here is not to say that cannabis production is not having impacts on hydrology and water-based ecosystems, rather to say it's not the total amount that's concerning, it probably has to do with the timing and the place of water use. Moving quickly, roads, habitats, and slopes. These grows are far from roads. 70% are 500 meters from a paved road. So we're going to have a lot of road building. This could have some negative impacts. A number of grows, basically right in critical habitat along streams. And 20% of the grows were on areas with a slope greater than 30%. Forest loss and fragmentation. We started to delve deeply into this, and I don't think there's much of a story here. I really don't think that you're going to be able to show that cannabis is having any impact on forest fragmentation in Humboldt County. We're still working through it. The issue is that it's hard to exactly know how you want to measure the cannabis grow. If you measure the actual footprint of the grow, there's basically no impact. If you try to make a circle around everything that might be related to the cannabis grow, there might be a marginal impact. But compared to other land clearing and forest clearing activities in Humboldt County, cannabis is a very minor contributor, I would say, to forest fragmentation. Spatial clustering, we found very strong spatial clustering. Basically, growers grow by other growers. We don't know the story exactly why this is. This is something that we have ongoing research for. All right, to the takeaway. High density plants in some areas, low density in others. It's a heterogeneous system. Massive economic impact relative to other agricultural and natural resource industries. Small amounts of water. But the use of it, the timing of it is problematic. Probably little forest clearing because of cannabis production. I think it's a minor cause. But the grows are not exactly where you'd want them. And what this says to me is this is actually a land use planning problem. the parameters that are set up and the issues that may be caused by cannabis grows, I think, could largely be solved by good planning. And we'll leave it at that. Am I calling? Okay, yeah.
I just was curious. I was kind of blown away by your assessment that the land use change, like that fragmentation, or like the, or not fragmentation, but just like that. You showed that slide comparing like A and B, that it's not having a big impact. Is that just across the county? Because I mean, this last point, I mean, it is concentrated. I mean, we're seeing.
So we've
version like wide scale in certain parts.
Yeah, we've run this at the Huck 12 level for all the watersheds, and there's not a single watershed in Humboldt County where there's more forest clearing for cannabis production than there is for forestry.
You debunked some my other opinions today, but what about the pesticide, herbicide?
Yeah.
Is that fictional? Is that fictional, or is it?
I don't know. I would say there's, at least that I know of, there's no good data on it. I think it's potentially, it could be a problem, absolutely. We just, we have so little data on what growers are actually doing because of sort of the long history of illegality. There's not strong connections with researchers, so I would say that is an area of definitely potential concern. But what's actually going on, I don't know. Maybe somebody else in the room does, yeah.
How did you differentiate between agricultural growth and trespass growth in the analysis?
Yeah, so in the data, there probably is some trespass grows in the data. Our basic assumption was trespass grows didn't want to be seen, and so they were probably growing in a way where it was going to be difficult anyway for us to detect them using our methodology. There's no doubt that we did probably pick up some trespass grows, though. Mm-hmm.
I'm concerned about your analysis of fragmentation because when you take forest land out of production or forest, into forest production, and cutting, I don't see that reflected because you're talking about fragmentation as like how much has been cleared of forest. Because if somebody buys 160 acres of forest lands that's been fragmented from, say, a 5,000 acre family forest, and this is done again and again, I consider that fragmentation even though they're only growing on the quarry of the 160.
Right, so when I say fragmentation, I'm talking about, that's a great point. So I would consider that partialization, so the breakup of large parcels to small parcels. I was talking, when I said fragmentation, yeah, and I'm sorry, that was a very quick slide. And I didn't show any numerical results because we're still working on it, so I didn't want to give too much. But we're talking about habitat fragmentation metrics. So how much of the forest is comprised of forest edge? How big is the average patch of continuous forest? Things like this, which are not related to parcel boundaries. But your point is a very, very valid one, that the parcelization is likely a big issue. Yep.
Did you look at all changes in road density?
Road density is the big thing we haven't been able to get at. And the problem is that in a lot of the spots that are most interesting, the roads are under the canopy, and we just can't map them. And so this would be, if anybody has an idea about how to map or do that, I would be willing to. If anybody wants to pay to fly a plane with LiDAR for all of Humboldt County, I got some people who can do the analysis. But yeah, I mean that's a big thing that we're missing, and I think it's a big issue. Yep.
Are you going to consider all the human impacts? If there's 4,200 grows and each has 10, 20 people during the summer, the critical low flow period, did you consider the human water use associated?
I have not. I'd never thought of that before. That's a really good point. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.